everybody. Okay, we'll get going. We got stuff to do. Um, First things first is that Rachel, our wonderful Rachel Capon, sent out a message to all the committee leaders a couple of days ago and said, hey, we got a deadline, a hard deadline for submitting your survey questions. So what I did is I got on the job real quick, and I feel like based upon the incredible discussions, we definitely have, a good record of where people's concerns were. And we were only allotted 2 to 4 questions. So I put them together, I narrowed it down and tried to formulate questions that I felt as your team leader best represented the 2 subjects that we really have been honing in on, which is mail-in ballot security and mail-in ballot accessibility for voters. So I submitted those 4 questions. The question I have for the people here tonight is, did you review the questions that I submitted? And are there any major reservations, edits that you would like that to be added? Dr. Bitzer can take your suggestions and fix up the question. Or are you good to go with how I presented it? You want to take a look real quick? I can actually pull it up. How's that? Let me share my screen.
And while she's doing that, just to kind of update folks, the steering committee for the commission, which is Jennifer Roberts, Bob Orr, Chris Cooper, Martha Croft, and myself, along with Rachel, will be meeting tomorrow afternoon. And we're going to basically be pulling all of these questions from the various groups together. And what we're going to do is work with the 4 polling organizations in the state. So we're looking at ECU's poll, High Point University's, Elon University's, and Meredith College's polling outfit. And we were going to divide up the questions, give them to the respective polling directors. And since they are the experts on question framing, question wording, the kind of science behind public opinion polling and questioning, these would serve kind of as the baseline, and they would do any tweaks that they felt needed to do for the various questions on the polls. For the folks that were joining that didn't hear the conversation earlier, these probably will be in staggered time over the next couple of months. I know one poll, the Elon poll, is going into the field next week. I know High Point just came out of their latest survey, and I haven't talked to Meredith or the ECU yet to see what their schedule is like. But we'll probably get these over the next couple of months before the drafts are due. And this information will basically serve as kind of foundational knowledge for North Carolinians to know what public opinion is like on these various topics and issues. So we'll include this information in each committee's report once we get them back from the polling organizations.
Thank you for that, Dr. Bitzer. The only question I have, well, first of all, before I pose a question, what does everybody think about the 4
I think they look great.
questions that were submitted? Nadine? Julius?
I just have like a thing potentially we might want to add. For question 2, it says, how concerned are you about potential instances of voter fraud? Do we want to make the distinction between like malfeasance by election officials, or like who is is it election officials who are manipulating the tallies, or is it like people who are casting absentee ballots who shouldn't be?
Yeah.
If I may add to that as well, is there any, I guess, consideration for like foreign tampering into our elections? So like we're specifically pinpointing, as Nadine was getting at, in terms of like who the fear is towards. Is it towards foreigners tampering with the elections? Is it towards the election officials themselves? Like, where does that lie?
Well, those are excellent questions. Yeah, because when you talk about potential instances of voter fraud, of course, that's very broad.
One suggestion that we could just detail these differences and make it like a grid. I don't know how the surveys will be delivered, but like you can easily make like a grid where you have the same response options, but just change like the definition of whatever it is that we're looking at.
Yeah.
Which is like not very expensive in terms of like survey time, but that's like for online surveys. So that's just, it wouldn't be like costly for submitting more questions if it's a grid. I don't know if that makes sense to anyone
Can
else.
you explain to me what you mean by grid?
Like a table. So you would have the columns be the response options and the rows be the different, like we could have voter fraud and have a like perpetuated by voters or something like that, or like election officials tampering or
How about
outside
this? How
influence be the
concerned are
rows.
you? How about this? How concerned are you? Now I'm playing with editing in my head here. So
Yeah.
how concerned are you about potential instances of voter fraud in North Carolina's mail-in voting process within the following, whatever, what is it? Framework, something within the
Mhm.
following, and then under it, you could say foreign interference, political, I don't know, what is it? What am I looking for here? Political operatives, intentional, I don't know. So we could define that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was
Okay,
trying to explain.
so in the voting process related, no, okay, how concerned are you about potential instances of voter fraud? Instead of saying how concerned are you, because that then asks the question, well, what's your level of concern? How would you suggest we change this question? Instead of how concerned we are of potential, how about in your opinion, where are potential instances of voter fraud more likely to occur, possibly?
What if you just say, are you concerned about potential instances of voter fraud? That way you're not sort of skewing it that there might be voter fraud. And then
Okay.
Are
A
you
Are you
common, sorry.
concerned?
And Dr. Cease, just a thought is to use that if you're really trying to get after voter confidence across the security and access front, maybe you just phrase each question like the first one as far as relative confidence, that the potential.
I think I'm having unstable connection. Can you try to say that again? Because it's going in and out, and I think it might be me. I'm not for sure.
Yeah, Dr. Cease, George Smith here. I maybe the way to get more consistency across all four questions is to frame all four of them in a relative confidence terms, like the first question is framed, rather than go from confidence to concern to, believe, think, right? What is your relative confidence in each of these four fundamental questions? And then you phrase the question to get after their relative confidence. So you get consistency in the responses across the 4 questions. So
Okay.
it's 1 through 5, not confident at all, through extremely confident. And you frame the questions to solicit those types of responses. So you don't go from confident to somewhat concerned to
So
disagree.
change so when you're looking at number 2. Okay. So when you're I think my internet is really bad. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so that's a great point. So you want to look at it as far as confidence across confidence in something, correct?
If you're trying, yeah, if you want to gauge voter confidence across these 2 fundamental areas, which have 2 questions each, if you will, security and accessibility, then maybe you just kind of you kind of reframe the questions as to their relative level of confidence. You know, how confident are you that measures are in place to prevent potential voter fraud? Parenthetically, you know, as was discussed earlier, be it at the site, at the counting, or by the actual voter, him or herself. Is that
Okay, so I'm changing it as we're speaking here. So I have, how confident are you that, can you restate your question?
that appropriate security measures have been implemented to prevent voter fraud within the mail-in voting process?
I've lost. Well, I'm keeping number 1. Okay, so are we keeping number 1? Because I'm on number 2. So
Yeah.
what's wrong with how, Dr. Bitzer, help here? What's wrong with how the question is formulated in number 1?
Oh, I don't think we're concerned about number 1. I think where we're trying to go with is naming the various components. You know, could there be
Yeah,
voter fraud? Could there be tampering by election administrators? Could there be foreign
right.
interference? And I think what George is trying to do is keep consistent the responses and frame the questions around that not confident to extremely confident, if I'm hearing the general correct.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
Okay.
what
Okay.
beneficial is if we don't necessarily worry about the actual question framing, but if we give the polling directors a sense of, we want to understand the level of confidence on protection from voter fraud, protection, North Carolinian sense of protecting against, political malfeasance. I think somebody put into the chat of, election administrators, of foreign interference. I could see some of these questions overlapping, particularly with the ballot security committee that is wanting to ask questions as well. So there may be some overlap. We may be specific on the mail-in aspect, but they may have other questions related to ballot security
Right.
that
Yeah, I think that, overall, security in elections is going to touch on all of the categories and the different subcommittees.
Yeah.
So we're submitting this because we want to ensure that they're going to address the confidence level that, how do you like this? How confident are you regarding the efforts to prevent voter fraud in North Carolina's mail-in voting process? What do you think of that?
I think that voter fraud, there is the separate notion of election fraud, which is outside of the voters' control, but there are outsiders that are affecting the votes, the ballots being submitted. I'm just curious where the ballot security, if they have questions, that there may be some overlap. So we can certainly get senses of things, but we can drill down and maybe have specific questions on the mail-in aspect
Yeah,
based, and then the ballot security might take another tact with some other issues that they're coming up with.
go ahead, Nadine.
So in a previous institution, I did political polling for the Texas Tribune poll. So I have a few this is what I did for years. But one thing we have to keep in mind writing survey questions like this is we have to keep in mind what the main thread is. Are we measuring confidence of this question, or are we measuring beliefs that voter fraud exists or that it's happening? So if we change this to a confidence question, we're talking about like, are we confident in our system, versus the other question I think was more about how often do these things happen, or how big of a problem is it? So it's like a slightly different question if we change it to about confidence.
Yeah, well,
And
it's confidence versus, it's funny because you're touching on people's perceptions. And perceptions have everything to do with public trust. So when you ask a question, how concerned are you? Like the original way, how concerned are you? Gets right into what is the level of concern that people have. And it kind of gauges the seriousness of independent thought regarding public trust in our mail-in ballots. Confidence, I think, touches on that. So we're just playing here with how, it's very subtle, in how it changes, well, in how that it relates to people's perceptions.
I would say that it's important. I think where we wouldn't step on other people's toes question wise would be if we have how much. I think we need to have a question measuring people's beliefs in the amount of fraud that is occurring, how much of this is happening, at least in people's minds. And then a separate question could be, how confident are you in the system catching these things? Because voter fraud is essentially a crime that someone's committing, right? It's external to our system, and it's the system's job to catch it, right? I guess that's how I kind of see it, that how people are going to commit voter fraud, they're gonna do something bad, but maybe a separate question would be how confident are you that our system can keep these fraudulent votes from making it into the final tally? So that would be kind of two separate questions that might give us a more full picture of, do people think it's a problem, and do people feel that, are people confident in that government is taking care of this problem? That's just maybe a two question solution
how does
to the
that
bigger
change? How does that change from security measures?
I don't think it's all that different. No, I mean,
so we're looking at security measures, and how confident do they have in the security measures in our mail-in voting system, whatever their thoughts, whatever they be, because we could go on and on and on about all the variables that would come up under security measures. Not everybody that's going to be taking this survey, probably the majority people, don't have any clue about what security measures are actually in place. But we want to know how confident they are, or how concerned they are about security measures, however we want to word that. And then the second question is specifically about voter fraud, which we're seeing some big voter fraud cases in other states. Yes, Stephen, welcome.
I guess I'm not muted. I'm not sure. I apologize for missing our previous meetings. I had crazy events, and then
it's okay.
I'm late again tonight, but I have watched all the minutes. I've read all the materials, watched the videos. So I've done as best I could.
Thank you.
I'm and so I'm kind of going not by listening, but by reading all that has been provided. See, on questions 1 and 2, they seem like awkward, and they also appear to me to not ask what I would think you want to ask.
Okay,
And I've done some of this before, and I sent you what I did for another committee when I drew up the questions for another committee. See, to me, it'd be, I'm not sure how to use on a scale of 1 to 5, but my first question would be, do they even believe that there are fraudulent voting efforts in the mail-in process? It'd be, do you believe that there are fraudulent measures involved in the in mail-in voting? Yes or no? Or you're confident there is, you're slightly confident there, whichever. You could use those if you wanted to phrase it, but that would be, let's go to the crux of the matter. Do you feel that there's voter fraud in North Carolina's mail-in voting system? And then
Yeah,
I would say,
go ahead.
anyway, then I would start, in developing questions around, what measures are being taken. I don't know. It just seems like I had a hard time when I read these 2 questions that they're almost the same, but I'm not sure you're getting any real understand. It was confusing to me.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm
All
kind
right,
of rambling.
Yeah, no, all right. So great points. The original way it was stated is how concerned you are about it. So I agree with you. Like in number 3, we look at, do you believe? So my question is I don't think a person's confidence in the security measures are the same with their belief that actual voter fraud is happening. I think they're 2 different things. So maybe we can state in question number 2 specifically to address what people believe in the activity of actual voter fraud. Because in our discussions over the last, since December, there have been significant comments made about the perception of voter fraud. And that I think that that's important to address. So if everybody's in agreement with that, let's change number 2 to go in line with finding out what people actually believe and perceive. Do they think that it's actually happening? And if so, how is it happening? Like that addresses what I think Brandon or Julius, I forget which one, said, that they wanted to see where are they, if they're concerned that voter fraud is happening, then where or how. So let's change that question together. Okay, does that sound fair? Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
It sounds good to me. I mean, I think if you go back to, are you concerned? That voter fraud is happening in North Carolina? If so, or is it at the election? Is it at the site of the election board? Is it by voter fraud, malfeasance? Is it by international players? You have to be able to drill down to people, because we can't do, I mean, I guess the technology can do something about international actors, but the things that we can really control would be at the Board of Election sites and making sure that, not more than you only vote once, those kind of procedures that are actually in place. But that way you can distinguish where you think if they think there is a fraud, where is the fraud occurring?
Okay. So what do you think of how I stated the question now? Are you concerned that mail-in voter fraud is happening in North Carolina? If so, if yes, what we could say, if yes, in what ways? And then have some choices of the major areas where people think it's happening. Political operatives, foreign interference is one. What do you think of that?
I submitted like you don't have to use my question. It was just like
Right.
when we submitted questions, that is a similar format to this that was based on like things that have been used on other political science surveys.
So with your insight there, what are the categories? There's ballot harvesting. There's political operation, coordinated political operations.
Yeah, so those were not on my original one, so those are good to think about. But people voting for people who weren't themselves, like voting for in place of others, I forget the exact wording. Officials changing the vote tally. I'm blanking, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm looking up right now.
Non-citizen voting.
Oh, yeah.
So those are ones that are commonly used on other surveys. So these are not super original.
Yeah, right
but
here. You had
yeah.
people voting more than once in an election, people stealing or tampering with ballots that have been voted, people pretending to be someone else when going to vote, people voting who are not US citizens, officials changing the reported vote count in a way that is not true reflection of the ballots that were actually counted. So, opinions, thoughts about this potential kind of tweak to number 2?
I like it. I think it actually gives you more information. It's a long question. I don't know if we're allowed to have, some questions, but
Well, it's going to be changed. I mean, just like Dr. Bixer was saying, this is going to the experts and how that they are going to formulate our questions. We're just giving the recommendations.
right.
Correct, Dr. Bitzer?
Yeah.
But I think we're on to something that we could provide them. So the question 2 would be part A and part B. Are you concerned that mail-in voter fraud is happening in North Carolina? Yes or no, right? And then if yes, in what ways? We could do check all that apply or however they want to do it, right?
I would maybe just tweak the wording. It's like how much of a maybe make it, I'm not articulating myself well, but like phrase it in terms of how, like, is this a problem? Because people might take this very literally as like, yes, there's been one documented case of voter fraud, but did that have an impact on the results of the election? So
yeah, but that's not the point. In my opinion, that's a good point, because that's what we're talking about. But when it comes to people's perceptions and public trust, truth, we could provide them that only one occurred and it didn't make any difference to the outcome of the election, but it's really their perception that matters. And that's what, if I'm not mistaken, that's what the crux of this whole thing is to combat public trust. So if the public trust says they don't care that one person, we've had one case in North Carolina that was terrible and people went to jail, their perception is, oh my gosh, it's happening. So I don't think we have control over they knowing all the details, because most people don't. You know what I'm saying? They don't know all the
Yeah.
details.
I'm just thinking that we want to make sure our measure is as accurate as possible. And
Yes.
if there's like a way that's like students, if there's a way that you can misinterpret something, someone might do it. And like I said, I used to work on the Texas Tribune poll and we would agonize about stuff like this. So I apologize.
Oh yeah, no,
This is a little in the weeds, but
it is in
people
the
will find a
weeds.
way.
No, but it is in the weeds, yes. But this is our job. You know, this is what we were asked to do. We're asked to kind of get in the weeds. And really, I have complete confidence in the sense that this is not supposed to be an exhaustive research project. We don't have time or the resources. We want to get a general understanding in North Carolina regarding people's perceptions about many different things. And it's we take it from there based upon the responses that we have, which, you know, I have issues regarding the polling places, putting them out, because I'm wondering just how many Republican or conservative voters are actually going to be able to reach with these polls. Okay. But that's neither here nor there. We're putting it out there. So my question is, you know, how taking from what we learned, the limited things that we learned from this, what can we come up with based upon our activities that we can provide some reasonable recommendations through our report? Does that sound right? Am I on the right track?
Yeah, I think, you know, we're all agonizing over this, and as Nadine, you know, has had the experience. I think once we get these to the polling directors, and if we
Yes.
just express this is what we're interested in knowing and trying to find out, if they've got further questions as to specific wording choices and is this capturing the intent of what we want, I'm certain that they'll reach back out to me. I can reach back out to the committee and just kind of do a quick, you know, is this the intent that we're trying to accomplish, or what are we, you know, is this a sufficient attempt to measure what we're trying to capture here?
Yeah. Yeah. I think by offering what Nadine right here, her suggestions, and this is my opinion, and I would love to hear about everybody's opinion. I really do. Based upon these choices here, the one area that I see missing is what was said regarding foreign interference. I think that's important too in people's perception. We could add that. And however these polling experts want to word it, that's what's going to be in their hands to do. We don't have any control over what's going to happen to these questions once they're officially submitted to Rachel. They're going to go to to another group that's going to go through this, combine, look at any kind of overlap, and it's quite possible that it will, things will be missed. You know, maybe they'll change it in a way that really doesn't speak to it. I hope not, but it's a possibility.
Yeah,
So
I think we have to remember that all of these, you know, statements that we want feedback on are relating to mail-in voting, that there could
yes,
be, you know, issues, very similar issues with
yes,
in-person voting, with early voting.
okay.
So, you know, we'll make the, you know, make the idea relevant to this committee, but there may be some overlap of other committees wanting similar information about other voting
Yeah,
methods.
right. So how does everybody, oh, go ahead, Stephen. I'm so sorry. I see you waving. Go ahead.
Okay, I was on the Board of Elections in Buncombe County, and for a couple of different elections. All of those were uttered at one point or another, but here's what the concern was from Jay and I as we raised the question, and we did have the same questions were bipartisanly asked. the question wasn't, are there more than one? These were, they're always said. The thing we had was in the harvesting of these votes, who is accountable to collect that ballot and get it in the mail? The interference was not after the ballots came in or when we had to open them up. That wasn't the issue. The issue was, is that a legitimate vote from a person and that is what they intended, or were they graciously helped in the preparation of their ballot and made sure it got mailed in? And the reason I raised that question is at about the end of the first week, one of the things we noticed was in Buncombe County, we knew that they were actively working to get these harvested votes big time. I mean, I can tell you the location of the house that they worked out of. It was investigated, but you know, what do? They're just election workers. But what we saw is that we were getting a multitude of ballots where they only selected the front side of the ballot, and we were not allowed. We were told that we were not going to check the address. If we see something that's really questionable, they had their procedures that they could verify it. But if you only had to have 2 items on the mail-in, on the certifications to verify, it was so ambiguous that there was no way to legitimately certify that Steve Duncan in 1264, well, at that time 44 Huntington Chase, is the one that intentionally marked the ballot and dropped it in the mail, because they were out collecting and helping people fill their ballots out and drop them in the mail. None of these really addressed that. I'll give you a question I asked. I said, okay, and I don't remember the exact address, but I said, so if I decide I want to go check 1302 Riverside Drive, Asheville 28806, I was told, please be careful with that. That could be voter intimidation. I said, well, that's interesting. Is anybody going to check it? Well, we have to be real careful with that. It may be voter intimidation. I said, well, I just want to let you know, I'm in real estate. I went and did a little check on the address that I just suggested, and it's the middle of the French Broad River. So the question that we had continuously was, how do you know that the person that's involved in the harvested ballot is the actual one who cast it and it is reflective of their full voting choice? Now that's complicated.
Okay. So,
That's
okay,
very
I'm hearing you.
complicated.
Let me, okay, I got you. I hear you. I really, really do. All right. I think, and so those are all valid concerns, and it did happen. Those things did happen. But I think what you're talking about here could be related to something that Nadine stated in here: people stealing or tampering with ballots that have been voted. Or, you know, is there a way that we could word that? I don't know. See, here we have foreign interference. Like, again, which one person talked about foreign interference? Julius, was it you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Julius, it was you. You said foreign interference, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, Stephen has something similar here, and that's political operations. And so Nadine, when you're thinking about what Stephen is saying and also adding foreign interference or some sort of interference, this idea that there's people are actually interfering in with very authentic ballots, people that they're verified, they can be verified, and that they are the ones that are submitting it. When you think of all these things, Is there a way that we can word your contributions here that might help to reflect what we're concerned about in our committee?
To also be
I
fair,
I see
I didn't
people
write these.
pretending.
I didn't write these. I snatched them from
I
other
know,
surveys.
but it says
So-
people pretending,
Yeah.
people stealing, tampering, people voting more than once, foreign interference, however they decide what that means, and officials changing the reported vote or other. Now, Stephen, when you think,
I think you have to use the word harvesting somehow, because
Okay.
that is the technique that
Okay.
raised specific question.
Okay, so if you want to use the word term ballot harvesting, let's just use it, ballot harvesting. Okay, we'll put it right here. How's that? That way, at least our concerns are on the paper here. We're going to submit it. And that, again, it shows what this committee truly is concerned about. This is based upon our own experiences. And wherever that goes after we hit submit for Rachel, where that goes, they're going to take it, the executive steering committee, and Dr. Bitzer's on that executive steering committee. And so he's very aware of our concern about this, the level of concern. So I think that he would be able to be a good representative for us to make sure that they understand question number 2 and the seriousness of how we want to, gauge people's faith, their perception of voter fraud that's happening. Is that fair with what I'm saying, everybody? Do you?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
Okay. Becky, how about
Yeah.
you? Is that fair?
I think that's fair.
Stephen, are you good with that? Okay, so I think that we all have a consensus here, Dr. Bitzer, that number 2, we're very concerned about the potential for mail-in voter fraud, period, across the board in many different areas. And we've picked out some particular ways that we have experienced working on Board of Elections, that we've heard through news, whatever informs our ideas. And we have placed them in a list for them to consider allowing in our surveys. Okay. So you'll go to the steering committee and you'll be able to represent our level of concern regarding voter fraud.
Correct.
And okay, on that note, can I move to number 3 and 4?
And just real quick, Dr. Cease, on the 4th sub-bullet there, maybe a finer point is to use the phrase in number 3 where it says eligible citizens in North Carolina in place of U.S. citizens, just to put a closer tie to North Carolina. The 4th
Okay,
sub-bullet
so you want me to say what?
where it says U.S. citizens in number 2, the 4th sub-bullet.
Oh,
People
okay.
voting or not U.S. citizens. Okay.
People voting who are not, or so what do you want me
Who are
to
not
change that to?
eligible voters.
Who are not eligible citizens in North Carolina, just to use the same verbiage between 2 and 3.
Oh, very good. Yes, very fair. Is that everybody okay with that change? That's a great catch. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So number 3 and 4 relate to accessibility. We got number 1 and 2. We're good to go. That's security. Okay. Now we're looking at accessibility. So do you believe that mail-in voting provides equitable access to voting for all eligible citizens in North Carolina? Yeah, or,
I'm laughing because I think it provides eligible access to all citizens and more.
I'm feeling you, Stephen. I'm feeling you. I have to say that when I say I don't like my answers now that I'm looking at this closer, everybody, It says, do you believe that mail-in voting provides equitable access to voting for all eligible citizens in North Carolina? It should be yes or no, right? Agreed?
I kind of like that,
Which one?
what you had.
Okay,
You know,
so
I
I'm
may
gonna have
have,
to change the question then. It's gonna have to be a statement. How confident are you? We'll go back to General Smith. How confident are you that mail-in voting provides? How's that sound?
you could just start off with, I agree that mail-in voting provides equitable. I strongly agree, neutral, disagree, or I strongly disagree.
So
Can
do
you
you
just
think I
start
should
off?
just I should say I believe, or how do I frame this question, everybody? You see what I'm saying? It doesn't mix here. Do you believe?
Well,
I would start off just, and Nadine, I would defer to her in terms of this, but I would just say mail-in voting provides equitable access to voting for eligible
Yeah,
citizens of North
make it a
Carolina.
Yeah.
statement. Make it a
Mhm.
statement.
Do you strongly agree, neutral?
Yeah. Yeah. How does everybody feel about that?
I think
Looks good,
maybe,
man.
I don't know if we have to have the middle option, but I mean, I don't like the middle option. I always feels like a cop out. It's not going to help us if we have a middle option,
Take it
especially for
out.
this question. It's
We're
not.
gonna force them to make a decision. Do
Well,
they
I mean, that's what
agree?
we want.
That's correct. I agree 100%. I agree 100%. That's an excellent catch. Thank you. So, all right. So number 3 is good. Number 4, we're at 8 o'clock almost here, but I hate, I'm gonna just go over just a little bit, you guys. To what extent do you think that the accessibility of mail-in voting options positively impact voter turnout? Now, my question is do we even need this question? Or, I'm wishy-washy on this question. However, this was discussed in our previous meetings.
So here's
So,
a little lingo. You can say it's on the bubble. So if there's extra space on the survey, we have a question that we would like to be on it. But if you have to cut one, this
Right.
is the one to cut.
okay.
What if you narrowed down that to what extent do you believe, or to what extent do you believe mail-in voting impacts voter turnout in North
Aha.
Carolina?
I would
Just
take
cut
out
it.
positively. Yeah.
Cut it to the point, because I'm not sure. I think it's positive. I am sure that it impacts significantly the turnout, but I'm not. I still have some questions about whether positively,
Okay, yeah, because that's leading.
yeah. To what
So, to
extent
what
do you
extent
believe
do you
mail-in?
believe mail-in voting impacts voter turnout in North Carolina? How does that
Yes,
sound?
I like that.
I will say, just to push back a little bit, I did enjoy the word positively, because like the fourth question gets at whether or not mail-in ballots actually encourages people to vote, whereas question 3 gets at whether they have access. So I feel like access versus encouragement is something that's nice to be gauged, but at the same time, I understand what you guys are getting at.
Thoughts, everybody? It's a great point, Julius. Thanks for keeping us honest. It is. Do we want to hone in on that or what? Remember too, that these are survey questions. We are going to be engaging the community. So Julius, there are opportunities we're going to be engaging the community more directly. Just, however we choose to do it, but we can touch on this.
I think maybe we could phrase it as agree, disagree. Do you think mail-in ballots increase turnout? That's just another way of thinking about it, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone, I mean, I don't understand a framework where it would negatively increase turnout. Like, I
Right.
think,
Yes. This is excellent. I mean, my personal opinion is changing it to increase voter turnout kind of presupposes that it's a positive thing, right, Julius?
Yes, ma'am.
So what do you think about that change?
I think that's more than fine.
Okay. Is everybody good with number 4?
We have to change the response options.
Okay, let's change the response. How do we want to change them?
We have the decreases turnouts in here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So to what extent do you believe mail-in voting increases?
Should we just go with the agree, disagree framework?
Yeah.
Or what
Well,
do you think?
If you,
Could
if
you
you,
not
if
just,
if you make it as a statement like number 3, then you can just use the same A through D that Nadine just highlighted. Take away that middle ground.
how
And
about
you just
that?
make it a statement,
Okay. So we could say mail-in voting increases voter turnout. Right?
Yeah.
How does everybody feel about that?
Good.
Stephen?
looks,
I think
Brandon?
actually,
that looks good. Yeah. Cut
Brandon?
that to what you're looking for.
Yeah, that looks
What
good.
about-
Everything looks good.
Okay, Brandon, cool beans. All right.
the only
So-
thing for this one, I don't know if we want a middle option because maybe people have like, I don't think it increases or decreases.
How about
Sorry,
that?
I'm.
No, I love it. I love it. I love this. I love it. I love when mine.
Neutral option for sure. Yeah, I was gonna say that. Yeah,
It's-
the neutral option is for sure.
Okay. All right.
Would,
Because some people could care. They don't know. They don't know. All right. So we got our 4 questions. We're good to go. These are the questions I'll resubmit to Rachel. Okay.
So are we
Yeah.
guaranteed all 4 in some
No.
form or another? Then
No.
do you want to put an asterisk by number 4 if you think that's, if they have to cut one, if you're, if you're on the bubble, cut this one?
No, I don't think we need that because they're going to do it anyway.
Oh, okay.
They're going to do it anyway. Don't you think, Dr. Ritzer?
I will advocate my strongest to include all 4 of them.
Okay,
So
that's
I
why
will do my
this
best.
is, yeah.
can
I think,
on number 4, I'm looking at that. I like that we have an unsure or don't know. I don't know that I would, if I was being quizzed, I don't know whether I'm neutral or not. I really just don't know, or I'm unsure. I think the an unsure don't know is
got it.
something that would be more understood by
Yes.
those being polled in the sample than
Yes.
neutral.
Well,
I am
someone
so
might think it
agreeing with
has no impact. Here's the thing, maybe someone thinks it has no impact, and then it just included another option that's don't know. Because maybe someone's like, I don't think it changes anything.
Right.
So
I'd suggest the same, using neutral and maybe a unsure, don't know.
Okay. So you
Yeah.
want me to put neutral here? And then unsure, don't know.
I think
at
that
the
would
end?
probably be at the bottom. Unsure, yeah, that would probably be at the bottom.
How's that?
Hmm.
yeah, that's a technical question. I think people might not know.
Yeah, it's true. One thing I can't stand is ambiguity. So, all right.
But it's important, and maybe that's like important to know that this is not, this is something that's like the
Not on
people
the
in the
radar.
know all seem to know, but everyone else is like, oh.
Okay. All right. So hang with me real quick because we're going to have homework here. I know we're going over a little bit, but this is important. Let me save this. So it's
If you
saved.
save that and just send it to me, I'll forward it on to the.
I'm going to do that once I get off this line here. Now, we can't, I mean, it's going to take a long time to do this. So I am really going to ask the members here tonight I need your responses, probably within the week. I want you to take a look at, oops, wait a minute, I got the wrong one up now. This one. I sent it all to you tonight. It's not going to include what we just changed. So I'm going to resend that out, okay? But it does include this. Assumptions. What I did is I took all of our assumptions and I tried to narrow them and clarify them. And what I need from this committee is a thoughtful look at these assumptions. Now, remember what we're going to be utilizing these assumptions for. Our report. It's informing how we're handling our survey questions. It's going to inform how we engage the community. It's going to inform our recommendations. These are very important. So I really need some input. I'll just quickly go over assumption 1. We're not going to change them tonight because it's too much, but I want to make sure everybody sees what I've done. I made 2 columns, potential recommendations. I'm going to change that to say potential recommendations because that's eventually where we're going to go. It doesn't have to be done tonight or this week, but that's where we're going. The assumptions clarified and narrowed. A sizable portion of voters believe mail-in voting is less secure than in-person voting due to concerns about potential tampering, fraud, or logistical issues such as ballots getting lost or mishandled during the mailing process. Remember, personally, I don't like how USPS is handling mail-in ballots at all. I think it's very, very sketchy, and I just don't like it. So that's something that's important to me personally. But overall, it's, this assumption that it's less secure. Mail-in voting is less secure somehow. That a considerable number of voters are aware of the option to vote by mail, but may not fully understand the specific procedures, deadlines, or requirements involved, leading to uncertainty or confusion about how to effectively participate in the mail-in voting process. And I think it was Brandon or Julius, Deandra, that were concerned about this, is the awareness, the level of awareness about mail-in voting. They may be aware that it exists, but they don't have any clue that they may be eligible to mail-in vote and how to go about doing that. So there's that assumption, okay? Despite the USPS's established procedures and safeguards, a small percentage of mail-in ballots may still be susceptible of getting lost or delayed during transit, leading to concerns among voters about the reliability and security of the Postal Service for delivering ballots. We found that we couldn't accept some ballots. They had to be cured because the post office didn't properly mark them, or date them, or that it was ripped to shreds. So I didn't like that. I didn't appreciate that when I was on the board. Like when we submit a mail to the USPS during election season, they better take care of that ballot. And it should be across the board, chain of custody, all the bells and whistles, in my opinion. That's me. Okay. So I thought I'd put that out there somehow. And then for certain marginalized or underserved communities, such as those with limited access to reliable mail services or individuals with disabilities who may face challenges with completing and returning mail-in ballots independently, may encounter barriers that prevent them from fully participating in the mail-in voting process. Nadine brought up some incredible arguments to support that. I mean, rural voters, people that couldn't make it to the mailbox, had difficulty finding the stamp. And we already came up with a pretty simple kind of a recommendation. Hey, let's provide every mail-in vote when it goes with a return postage paid. That's pretty simple. Concerns among voters and election officials regarding the accuracy and efficiency of the verification process, particularly ensuring that each ballot is properly authenticated to prevent fraudulent activity, such as signature mismatches or discrepancies in voter information, which could potentially undermine the integrity of the election results, something that we talked about again tonight with Stephen. Number 6, concerns about exploitation or manipulation by certain groups or individuals seeking to influence election outcomes by targeting vulnerable populations, potentially through coercion, misinformation, or unethical practices aimed at obtaining their votes without proper consent or understanding of the voting process. And then lastly, the last one is transparency of their decision-making processes. This was in response, I didn't write this very well, but this was in response to transparency in the State Board of Elections. So transparency of the North Carolina Board of Elections decision-making processes, their responsiveness to concerns raised by citizens and political stakeholders, and their ability to enforce election laws impartially contribute significantly to the level of trust citizens place in the board's ability to oversee fair and secure elections. So based upon all of our conversations, the last two, this is how I broke it down. And my charge to you is, in this other potential recommendations, or I could say potential issues, okay, as well, I want you to put your notes. Give me your thoughts, because then I can take your thoughts and I can combine them, filter it, whatever, and come up with, send it out to you quickly so that we can at least get that written. Because remember, this piece right here is going to go into our report. So if we can get this piece done to it, you know, that's a huge piece in my opinion. Does everybody seem to agree with that, or am I missing something? Brandon, Julius, thoughts? Becky?
Yeah, I think I think you covered a lot of ground there.
Thank you.
I mean, I have to go back and try to remember what I sent you, but I know I sent you things about the North Carolina Board of Election, you
Yep.
know, precedent, making sure that
Yes.
it's the same decision across the board.
Yes, this is part of what you brought to the table, Becky, was number 7.
Yeah.
Now,
Nadine brought a lot on disability and accessibility. Several brought a lot on the authentication verification process, which was a big one.
Yep.
So, and then Julius and Brandon, I believe, or can't remember which one's our military guy. Julius, is that you?
he had to drop off.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't know. All right.
Yeah, I spoke about the postage, like in the detention centers, doing like the mail-in ballots at the detention centers.
Yes.
Making sure, like,
Yes.
you know, they aren't able to provide postage; they have to pay for it. So, like poll
Yes.
tax, because you know if they don't have any money on their books, I mean, they can't. You know, the detention center is not going to provide.
Yes.
For them, so
very, very important. Very.
So yeah, that's definitely.
So yeah, I'm with you on that. And of course, Deandra was big on awareness of the mail-in voting process, and it, you know, except that spoke to accessibility and in voter turnout. So so I think if everybody's in agreement, these 7 that I combined and filtered is a good representation of our conversations. Would that be in agreement with everybody?
Let
Go
me
ahead,
just,
Dr. Bitzer.
yeah, let me ask one thing. I think the first 6 all deal with mail-in voting. I wonder if we need to clarify number 7 to relate it back to mail-in
voting.
Some way, you know, is the transparency of the state board's decision-making processes related to mail-in voting, or, you know,
Yes.
the connection. I think that in thinking about not just this committee, but the broader commission, that is certainly something I think is a broad commission issue, but I want to make sure that we're making the connection back to
mail-in voting.
Balloting.
I added it. I added that, which was great. Thank you.
Professor, do you I'm trying to remember this. When last year or 2 years ago or whenever it was, Mark Meadows put his address down as a trailer somewhere in the middle of nowhere. Was that a mail-in ballot?
Yes, that was a 2020 mail-in ballot.
Yeah. And whatever happened with that?
Uh,
I don't think he was charged with voter fraud.
no, I don't know if a resolution has come about, to be quite honest with that. I don't recall.
Swept under the rug.
Well, we're not going to say that.
Okay,
We're going to
I'm known
say
for my
unknown
mouth, okay?
resolution at this point.
Okay.
My apologies. I'm pretty out there direct, so but yeah, not officially, but yeah, so it wasn't addressed, really.
Okay.
It
So,
may, and it still may be under investigation.
okay, fair.
From what I understand, the state board has a lot of investigations and and don't have the manpower, resource power to do things in timely manners. And I'll just leave it at that.
Well, my personal opinion too regarding the State Board of Elections is they got a lot of work to do in my opinion, in having effective responses to local Board of Elections concerns about issues. I don't think that it's addressed quickly. I don't think we get real strong answers. I think that your complaint or your issue goes into this invisible box, and it just, you don't ever, you don't have a feeling. I didn't leave with a feeling like our concerns were truly addressed up front, directly addressed for our county. And so the transparency to the NCBOE and their decision-making process, all of that is so important for public trust.
Yep.
So I want to make sure that they leave with our report with understanding that we believe that there's something that needs to be done with the quality of their responses and their follow through. Yep. So that's me talking as a member. All right. So does everybody understand what I need within this next week? Can everybody agree to get me something? I want something put in those little boxes. Okay. Whether it's an issue with it, hey, if you guys like how I presented it here tonight, let me know. If we need to, but a week will give you some time to chew on it privately. And if I could please get a commitment from everybody that's here tonight, because you're a part of this particular conversation, you have the context. Could you please fill in the boxes of your thoughts? Make sure that they're clear so I understand what you're saying. Okay. And if you have a potential recommendation, say, I don't have any issue with how it's stated, but I have a potential recommendation. Please put that in there. How can we address that? What could be done that's better, that could be improved, So is everybody on board with that request?
Yes.
I have like a bigger question.
Sure.
The recommendations, like how wide reaching should they be? Are they just like rather simple things to implement, or
I think it is
bigger?
Whatever your gift.
Whatever,
you have a gift and a level of knowledge and understanding and a perspective. Everybody does. And it's all valid. We can flush it out later. But if you got something to say and got, this came up like Stephen did tonight, shared from his heart what his experiences and, his frustration. I think that those thoughts need to be put down, no matter what they are, because this committee will then take that to our community when we engage. That was the one thing that we needed to hash out. But I think it's fair that we got this piece finished as best we could. After 1 week's time, I get a response from all of you in those boxes. I'll put it together and send it out immediately to everybody, because in our March meeting, we're going to have to be ready, everybody, because time is a waste in here, not wasting. I shouldn't say that, but time is moving. And we have to develop an event of some sort, a strategy that's going to allow us a greater connection with the local community, face to face, possibly. I don't know how that's going to work, but we want to take what we've discussed here and lay them in the laps of real people. And March has got to be that meeting, next meeting, where we're deciding how we're going to do that. Does that sound right? Because by May, Shawnee's fingers are going to be typing because I want that report, on time, something that we can really grapple with together. So March is going to be the time where we can, and I think that's the other homework piece. Come March meeting, we need some hard, good ideas of where do we want to go next? How do we want to engage the local community beyond the surveys and polls? Okay, that's what I need from you. So fill in this little chart and come back in March with how we can engage real people a little bit more one-on-one intensely, Does that sound fair? Does it sound like a good plan?
Sure.
Everybody? Julius, Brandon, Stephen, Becky.
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good.
All right, everybody's on board. All right. Well, as usual, you guys are all a joy to work with and to see. And I thank you so much for your important contributions this evening. I wish you well, and I will be looking for that little piece of homework in the next week. Dr. Bitzer is grading exams. If I could grade an exam, what would you get? Get an A. Okay, my friends, on that note, I will let you go. I'll make out the meeting minutes, get them out right away, get Dr. Bitzer what he needs for this new survey, and go from there, okay?
Sounds good.
Thanks.
All right.
Everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.